Emma Woodhouse has the world at her fingertips. She's young, pretty, and smart. She also happens to be the reigning queen of the village's social scene. Emily lives in Highbury, a small town about 16 miles outside of London, with her aging father, who is a very nervous and concerned person. Mr. Woodhouse loves Emma, but he's utterly unable to find her any guidance, which is perhaps why Emma doesn't seem to have any sense of her own limitations. Life seems pretty sweet, if a bit boring, and so Emma decides to spice things up by taking on a prodigy, Harriet Smith, a pretty sweethearty young girl she's introduced to. Even though Emma is determined never to marry herself, she immediately decides to find Harriet a husband, determined to make Harriet into a gentlewoman. Emma sets out to refine Harriet's taste, especially in men. She convinces Harriet to dump Robert Martin, the young farmer who likes her, and set her sights on the town's clergyman, Mr. Elton, a money-hungry jerk. Unfortunately, Mr. Elton turns out to be in love with Emma, or at least with Emma's money. After the Mr. Elton debacle, Emma thinks that she's learned her lesson in matchmaking. Luckily for us, if not for Harriet, she hasn't. When the dashing Frank Churchill, who is a well-off, exceptional man, comes to town, Emma tries hard to fall in love with him herself. She can't seem to fall head over heels for him, but she does manage to make a good deal of mischief by flirting with him in front of Jane Fairfax, a young woman who recently returned to Highbury to live with her aunts. Meanwhile, Emma decides that Frank might just be the perfect man for Harriet. Emma's exploits are watched and commented upon by her good friend Mr. Knightley, who is her brother-in-law's brother and a local landowner. Although Emma frequently ignores his advice, she cherishes his good opinion. When Mr. Knightley accuses her of belittling her poor neighbors, Emma begins to reflect upon her mistakes and even starts to change her ways. Unfortunately, Harriet confesses that she loves Mr. Knightley, not Frank. All of a sudden, Emma's plans crumble. She realizes that she loves Mr. Knightley too. Convinced that Mr. Knightley might be interested in Harriet, despite the fact that he practically lives with the Woodhouses, Emma crushes Mr. Knightley's attempts to propose to her. Eventually, all romantic models are cleared. Emma marries Mr. Knightley, and Harriet marries her farmer, Robert Martin. Emma's story is surrounded by side narratives of life in Highbury, including the romance of Frank and Jane Fairfax, the marriage of Emma's former governess, Mrs. Weston, and the escapades of the social climbers, Mr. and Mrs. Elton. The characters in the novel help the reader understand the time period in which the story is taking place because they display social hierarchies of the time, marriages, and pastimes of well-off families. Constantly throughout the whole novel, Emma is obsessed with social hierarchy, pointing out which people she's above and who she permits herself to talk to. She would not acquaint herself with anyone that she is too high above. Also, when trying to play matchmaker, Robert Martin asks Harriet to marry her. Emma will not permit it because she considers Robert just a low-class farmer and thinks that Harriet can improve her social status by marrying someone of higher rank. The reader is able to understand marriages of the time because during the course of the novel, many people become married. The people in the novel who marry, though, are very class-conscious. For example, Mr. Elton, when asked if he is interested in marrying Harriet, who is below him in social status, is outraged that people would even think he would marry her. The novel gives you a point of view of high-ranking families' activities and pastimes by describing the constant long walks the characters make, and the parties, the balls, and the dinners the characters host for one another. Through the novel, Jane Austen does relate some of her life to the novel. The main character, Emma, is an extremely observant woman. She notices everything about a person, she evaluates them and observes how they act, look, and hold themselves. She tries to piece their past together and guess at what will be in their future, such as who they will end up marrying and such. In her life, Jane Austen was said to be extremely vigilant. She noticed everything and nothing got by her. It is said that she put some of her own personality into the character Emma. The definition of a classic, according to dictionary.com, is something of the first or highest quality, class, or rank. I also think that what makes a book a classic is that it stands to the test of time. It is universal, is moving, and conveys a strong moral message. Emma is considered a classic because it has all of this. The novel was published in 1875 and is still being read today. The problems in this novel that the characters face we still relate to now. They are problems involving love and relationships, and problems like these will never become outdated. These problems occur with every human on the earth, and this is what also makes it universal. What also makes it a classic is the book's strong moral. Emma thinks that manners are the same thing as morals and are what makes you a good person. Though just because you have good manners does not make you a good person. The morals inside of you show how truly good of a person you are. When comparing the novel Emma and the movie Emma, One big difference was the interaction between Emma and Harriet Smith, especially towards the end. In the book, you realize the friendship between the two is really over. They remain merely friendly acquaintances, but each has a different circle of friends. In fact, in the book, you get the idea that each realizes they have never really been real friends in the truest sense of the word. Harriet's feelings were more awe that someone so high socially would include her in her circle of friends, despite the fact Harriet was an illegitimate child with no family known, no connections, and no money. Emma's pride was puffed up because there was a bit of hero worship in Harriet towards Emma, and because Emma felt she was bettering Harriet by her notice. In the movie, you get the idea that the friendship was true and will continue even after their respective marriages. As for the smaller difference, at the end when Harriet mentions she thinks Mr. Knightley cares for her, there is more of a rift between Harry and Emma than is shown. Harriet gets rather resentful when she realizes Emma doesn't like the idea of Harriet with Mr. Knightley. Emma keeps Harriet away purposely because this opens Emma's eyes to her true feelings for Mr. Knightley, and being around Harriet would only irritate her. Then when Mr. Knightley and Emma become engaged and Harriet is told of it, Harriet is inconsolable and Emma makes sure that Harriet is able to go to London for a while. This rift is only suggested in the movie, but probably because of time constraints wasn't fully shown. Another small difference was at the end when Mr. Knightley returns from a visit to his brother in London. He meets Emma on his way home from visiting the Woodhouse home. In fact, he meets Emma while she is walking in her own garden. He had visited the Woodhouse home and spent some time with Mr. Woodhouse before seeking Emma out in the book. In the movie, Emma goes to Mrs. Weston to tell her she loves Mr. Knightley, but that he might love Harriet. This didn't happen in the book.
Yet there's something in his situation that I envy.
Did I mention that we are having a new drain installed?
You will not ask me the point of my envy. Well, perhaps you are wise. But I cannot be wise. Emma, I must tell you what you will not ask. Though I may wish it unsaid the next moment.
Then do not speak it. Do not commit yourself to something which may injure us both to have said.
Very well. Very well. Good day.
Mr. Knightley. Mr. Knightley. I stopped you ungraciously just now and gave you pain. If you have any wish to speak to me openly about anything you might have in contemplation as your friend, I cannot refuse you. Indeed, as your old friend, I will hear whatever it is you wish to tell me.
Emma, you want our friendship to remain the same as it has always been. But I cannot desire that.
But why? I know I made mistakes, but had you been here the last few days, you would have seen how I have tried to change. Please, tell me I am your friend.
I do not wish to call you my friend, because I hope to call you something infinitely more dear. Have you not wondered why I never befriended Frank Churchill? It was because I knew he was intended for you. Indeed, when you insulted Miss Bates at the picnic, I thought that evidence of his influence over you. And I could not bear to see it. So I went away. But I went to the wrong place. My brother's house is usually a place of comfort to me, but seeing your sister there kept you fresh in my mind. And the torture, I assure you, was acute. I only felt hope again when I heard of Mr. Churchill's engagement. And I rushed back, anxious for your feelings, keen to be near you. I rode through the rain. I'd ride through worse than that if I could just hear your voice telling me that I might at least have some chance to win you.
Mr. Knightley, if I have not spoken, it is because I am afraid I will awaken myself from this dream. It cannot be true. But I feel so full of error, so mistaken in my makeup to deserve you.
What of my flaws? I've humbled you, and I've lectured you, and you have borne it as no one could have borne it. Maybe it is our imperfections which make us so perfect for one another. Marry me? Marry me, my wonderful, darling friend.